Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury.
Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast, the main podcast. The boys are back in town. The three of us are back. When was the last time we recorded it as a three? I can't remember. It's been too long. It's been too long, boys. Welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Hope you're all doing well. We are back. The Premier League is back. We are here to talk all things Arsenal. As always, we are here with my boys, Rohan and George. George with your new Danny Zuko haircut. And my boy Rohan. Start with you, Rohan. How are you?
I'm very good after a stressful day yesterday. Not gonna
It
lie,
was.
Okay.
Heart rate rising. How are you, Danny Zuko? All good?
I am good. Zuko's good.
Yeah?
That is. I've got to shower. So unfortunately, this is how we're gonna approach this one.
Rohan, did you see on X the other day that George compared himself looks-wise to Calafiori?
Yeah, I did see that, and I was thinking it got like 1 million impressions /
1
views.
million impressions.
Yeah. Oh no! What have they done to George?
I didn't actually. I saw it initially, and I hadn't gone back to it. So I maybe need to go back. How was the response to that, George? You kind of set yourself up a little bit.
That was the point. I had like a bunch of mutuals, and it wasn't even just Calafiori, but I was getting NSYNC. I was getting the flushed character. Do you know that one?
Oh,
flushed
yeah.
away.
Yeah.
I was getting that. I was getting Tweener from Prison Break.
Yeah.
There was a lot of references that I was getting, and all of it was you having a midlife crisis at this moment. and I was like, yeah, X probably needs to join in on the fun. And so, that reaction was what I expected.
It's all from the new camera.
All it takes is like one account to start it off, and then it just...
But you know what's weird?
Yeah.
One thing that I recognize is like everyone had their own analogy, but they were wildly different. Like going from like a mouse to like Tweener from Prison Break down to like NSYNC. I'm like, guys, that's just like different people at that point. That you're just saying that it's like the curly hair. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
I get pot noodle lesbian, so I'd say. I'd say you're doing better than me. Right, the Premier League is back. The Premier League is back, boys. Let's get into it. I mean, headline stuff. Finally, the football is back. And we've said this so many times during the transfer window. I'm so excited to talk about actual football again, because it just feels like all we do is talk about moves that might or might not happen and deals that might or might not happen. It's that side of the game is it can be really, really draining. So it's nice to have it back. It was, though, as you mentioned, Rohan, a incredibly draining game on many aspects. We're going to talk about many aspects of the game. We'll talk about Calafiori, get to Raya, we'll talk about our transitions, we'll talk about our press and stuff. But let's just start with the sort of the overall feeling. Obviously, George and I gave our takes on the instant reaction. How was that experience for you, that Man United game?
Awful. I hated it. Honestly, hated the whole game. Like, we'll obviously get into it, as you've alluded to. But for me, going into the fixture, and I mentioned this to George on the main pod last week, and also to James on TCP Live, where football doesn't always work via theory. In theory, Arsenal should be beating Manchester United comfortably when we look at where the two teams are, despite the fact that it's at Old Trafford, it's match day one. But those are factors in which there's an element of uncertainty there that makes me feel quite nervous, because we've seen what Arsenal have done over the years at Old Trafford, where our record under Mikel is fantastic there, but it's never an easy game, nor is it pretty. I'd say our best performance at Old Trafford under Mikel was, outside of the COVID lockdown year where we won 1-0, was the 23-24 when we won 1-0. And it was the Trossard goal. But again, it wasn't a game which I felt like completely at ease. And yesterday, I just think for me, like Old Trafford, match day one, everybody's watching as well, right? It's the 4:30 kickoff on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's prime time. And I don't know about you boys, but I hate 4:30 kickoffs where we're involved, because we have to watch everybody else. And we saw everybody else win, like Liverpool, Manchester City. It was nice that Chelsea dropped points, but the two big ones, they got their results, and City looked very impressive. And then everyone's looking at Arsenal thinking, okay, what are you going to do now? And just everything there made me feel really worried. And that's why I felt like just get the 3 points and run with it. And I'm buzzing by that. Performance-wise, I think there's a lot to talk about. I think there's some false narratives, I think, that we'll probably talk about in terms of this idea that it was a game that we've seen Arsenal play regularly, which I think is really false. But all in all, it was a tough watch. It was difficult, but we got the result, and I think that's all that matters when you go to Old Trafford.
Sort of headlines aside, there were some concerns around the performance. George, we spoke a lot on the instant reaction about, a win being a win, but obviously the performance needing to get better. And one of the big issues, and I think the big thing we probably need to get into, is our transitions. And as our tactical nerd, I'll come to you, one of our tactical nerds. There was a clip going around. It's quite a good clip that sort of, if you want to go on, I think both our X pages, so at Alex Moneypenny and at GeorgeV_FC, you can find it. I'm sure Rohan's found it as well. I haven't seen it. But it's basically all of Arsenal's moments where they win the ball in the midfield and we're sort of trying to get up the pitch. And there's what I see is a bit of two main issues. One, I would say the main issue for me, and probably the one over, is the timing and the accuracy and the weight of the releases. That is a big thing for us. But you can't unlink that from the running and from the timing of things and sort of where people are running, what spaces they're occupying, etc. Overall, it just feels like a team in a teething period, in a period where we're trying to transition to a new, not way of playing necessarily completely, but certainly having that in our locker, something which we really didn't have. Mikel mentioned post-game that we struggled in sort of attacking them in open spaces, etc. How do you see these issues? Because we're probably going to talk about this a lot, if this is going to be a way Arsenal are going to play a little bit more this season. If this is a way we're going to play with Victor Gyökeres, I suspect this isn't going to be the last time we speak about it on this podcast. How do we get our teeth into this? Where are we with this?
To me, it's about how you attack space. And I kind of highlighted in preseason, and I felt like this was something that the coaching staff had identified, because there was a lot of drills that there was a pass, but then emphasis on the run on the outside or on the inside, but it was about the speed to which you continue your run. And there was a lot of those drills that were happening, and that's typically when you're trying to coach how you attack space. And you wait for a certain trigger before realizing your acceleration. But, at the fundamental core of it, it's really simple. Run here, run hard, and run in this line is the coaching aspect of how you coach a run. And then at that point, 3/4 of it is going to be related to the release of that pass and timing when that's going to be correct. Because ultimately the coaching aspect is when X moves here, you will run and attack space in this manner. So when you've done those things, to me, that's just the very basic. When you talk about coaching running lines, that's not a very difficult thing to coach, right? You're going to say, okay, bend your run in this manner. In this scenario, you're going to bend outwards. It's very mechanical. It's not a difficult thing to do it. But for me, the ingenuity part always comes in the release, always comes in a team prepared about selecting the right pass, because we can create 3, 4, 5, 6 different running routes to talk football terms. But at the end of the day, it's the quarterback that's making the decision and what is successful at that point and who is the quarterback of your play. And far too often for me, those transitions have faltered because it's the decision making in transition. It's not that you lack necessarily the number of tools. It's not necessarily that we lack the routes. We have the routes. We've made the routes. Was everybody perfect in their running? No. There was a lot of people peeling in the same direction. So yeah, okay, you talk, you have a debrief. Listen, when we're in this scenario, one of you on the far side make a decoy run so X can go here. Those are things that we can do, but that's a quick fix. Those aren't things that are, difficult. For me, it's been, how often do we as a team make the correct decision in transition, when to release a pass, who to release a pass to, and then following that, how are we then attacking the box in the right way? And those questions, by the way, are a lot more intricate and a lot more difficult. And I'm dancing around the topic because it really centers on our captain in possession in terms of who's quarterbacking that play. Because right now, Martin Zubimendi is going to be a facet to it. He's going to be a potential big avenue to it. But when we're looking at some of our biggest issues last year, and we look at the differences now, you're looking at Martin Odegaard being the orchestrator of that. And I think that the odd thing is he had such an elite game out of possession that this in-possession critique is probably the fundamental flaw. And he just gets highlighted because some of the biggest chances came through him. But it's not just a Martin Odegaard problem. It's an Arsenal problem. People that are running in transition rarely make the correct choices. And the release of pass, they hold on to their pass too long. You're looking at Jesus, by the way, another player that was famous for dropping in, having some creativity. But guys, what did he struggle with? It was the release of pass. This isn't just a Martin Odegaard problem. And I think a lot of people have pinned it as such. And they've pinned the transitions on Martin Odegaard. And that's not fair because I think as a team, we struggle with that. Bukayo Saka, another player, excellent for his creative passing, particularly from the back post crossing. But that's another player that I think at times can delay his release in the cutback or wait for a particular moment. And his cutback is to a predictable location. It's not necessarily always head up. And I'm looking at the amount of times, guys, that we've got somebody making the correct decision in transition as far as the release goes, whether that's a shot, a pass, an action. That is a Arsenal frontline problem. And it's not player specific. So to me, it's just about coaching those transitions better because we're actually doing the hardest part. We're manufacturing them. That's what I get excited about. Like if we were looking at a game tape in which we were struggling really to open ourselves up and find players in space to create these transitions, that's a separate problem. The fact that we've got all these and they're not successful, it's positive in one light because it means we don't have difficulty in creating transitions, despite teams, by the way, trying to sit in and camp out in their box. So that's a major positive. The things that we're talking about, guys, these are a little bit easier to coach. Like it's an easier problem to fix, but nonetheless, it is a problem that I think the team has. And it was something that they really struggled to get with, I think, against United. And why it became so prevalent, by the way, these transitions, is because we were so poor in possession. So it highlighted the problem even worse, where our normal game was out the window. And then the game that we're trying to work on, we struggled with, which is more understandable. But yeah, I'll end on this. I think the irony of all of this, guys, is this is an example of Arsenal showing you something new, something that we destroyed the team for in preseason. Yep. And, you know, you see it in the first game of the season and you're sitting there and you're pissed and you're like, well, I wanted it here and I didn't want it there. And I'm like, but you're getting it. You're getting a change in the approach of Arsenal. And when they do find that out, the ultimate maturity is deciding when to do it. For example, the freedom and build-up was something that every one of us highlighted as something that we wanted to do. We've bought profiles. It's been a multi-year process. Last year was probably the first time I felt confident that there was total free reign and the build-up freedom was on another level to previous years. There was still a lot of structure involved in 22-23, 21-22. I'd say, last year was the first example I felt players were deciding when to go high, how to go to a 2-4, when to allow Rice to drop in, when to allow Raya to be the left center back. There was a lot more student kind of taking things in their own control of the build-up last year. And I think we're just in the beginning phases of coaching transitions. We're going to rely on these structural runs because we kind of are at our infancy. We're at like level 1 of our ability here. And I think we're working through the steps about getting it done. But nonetheless, for me, it's a lot more on the release when you talk about transition efficiency, because we have speed, guys, now. There's no sense in saying that we don't have speed. And that front line of Martinelli, Gyökeres, and Saka, they're runners, and they can attack space and attack space hard. So it's not a lack of pace issue. Are the runs the best? No. But they're getting there. They're attacking with speed, and we're attacking with numbers, too. Yep. So to me, the release is something that we need to focus on, need to get ourselves in a better position to do it. And that doesn't just isolate to transitions or to Martin Odegaard. It isolates to the entire Arsenal front line. Yeah.
And I think you raised some really good points there. I think ultimately what I feel is what you're saying sort of midway through there, which is this is very new. So we can't expect this to be perfect, and we can't expect to be, and I'm already seeing steps forward. For example, if we were just isolating to Martin Odegaard, I'm seeing a much fitter Martin Odegaard who is carrying through the middle and isn't falling over under any contact at all, which was an issue for him at points last season. So it feels like a fitter, someone who's able to ride contact a little bit better. We also created some good moments. There were some nice moments where Gyökeres put the ball into the box for Martinelli. There was a pass that Odegaard plays, and it's like a little bit wide, but it's a gorgeous pass to Bukayo Saka out wide. So there was some progress, but yeah, it's just going to take a little bit of time. And I think a lot of it's down to chemistry, ultimately. When you look at the best transition teams, first and foremost, you'll see 12 transition moments. 2 will come off, but 2 of them are in the highlights package or match of the day, and you go, oh my God, what a brilliant transition team. You don't see everything else, you only see it from your team. And secondly, it's chemistry. It is building chemistry, and that just takes time. It really does. And we have a new centre forward. It's just going to take a little bit of time. We also have to learn to play to his strengths as well, which I think is an issue that we probably could come to. Rohan, I don't want to shut you out of this conversation, but I sort of maybe wanted to move a little bit more onto Gyökeres and how we play to his strengths, and maybe a little bit more about the press as well, because I know you have some thoughts on there. But yeah, anything on what George said, but also maybe moving on to that.
Yeah, so George has articulated it really well in terms of the transitions, and there's positives and negatives to it. Like, the positive is the fact that this is different. The volume of opportunities we had in open spaces, and Mikel's alluded to this many times. It's why he, when we signed Madueke, one of the big things he put profound emphasis on in his quotes was, attacking open spaces. And he mentioned that when we played Chelsea last season at the Emirates, about how good they are in open spaces. And that's something that Arsenal needs to get better at. I will say with Odegaard, he actually had quite a few moments where he did play that ball quite quickly. But there were also other times in which there's a really good opportunity where Calafiori, I don't know if you remember it, he finds Odegaard with a brilliant pass, and then you're just thinking, okay, just play it to Saka now. Saka's in a very good 1v1 scenario, and then that's where George alluded to of holding on to it for too long. And then Saka had moments where he wasn't good enough in those scenarios. Martinelli had moments in which he wasn't good enough in those scenarios. Gyökeres made really good runs, but then there were also at times where, he was 1v1 and he wasn't able to adjust properly, and it looked quite clumsy. And there was also another moment where he overhit a pass. So it's like everybody was at fault at some stage. But I'd say Martin Odegaard certainly was the best out of that bunch in terms of what he did in transition. And it is teething issues. It's kind of like when I look at Gyökeres and Arsenal, and I mentioned this before, where Gyökeres plays a certain way, Arsenal play a certain way, and it's that clash, that mismatch right now that you're seeing, which is the teething issues in play. But the big positive is the fact that we want to change, we've got a new striker, and he plays differently, and we are seeing certain changes. There are also certain things in which we've mentioned before, where when you're going long and you're hitting it directly to Gyökeres, Kai Havertz thrives more in those scenarios than a Gyökeres, whereas you need to hit that ball into space. So those are things where we do need to adapt more to Gyökeres. But the point that I wanted to make on, that there were a few things that I think allowed Man United to have a lot of control in this game, and one of them was the press. And Mikel actually alluded to it in his post-matcher for Fox News and also on Sky Sports, where Gyökeres, actually, we've got to pronounce it properly. I got told off for that.
And there's no esh either, which I learned recently on his, they do that sort of thing where they all pronounce their names.
Yeah.
There's no sh. It's just Gyökeres.
I'm also quite guilty of saying Wanieri when it's just Waneri. That's another one. But yeah, so in regards to the press, now I thought Gyökeres had 2 very good games against Bilbao and Villarreal in that regard. But Manchester United, I thought he really struggled. And what United did is, predominantly at goal kicks, they set up with a back 3 nominally, but what they did is Matthijs de Ligt, he would invert alongside Casemiro within that pivot, and then Shaw and Yoro would split really wide of Bayindir to create that 3, and Bayindir being the middle centre-back. So what did Arsenal do in that scenario? Well, Saka would be stationed high to attack Luke Shaw when he receives the ball. Ben White would be ready to jump high as well on Dorgu. And Odegaard and Declan Rice would be on De Ligt and Casemiro. And the reason why they inverted De Ligt is to push Bruno a little bit higher. So that was the idea there, because Bruno is going to be more dangerous where he's in that space between the midfield and defensive line / DM, which is where Zubimendi is. So the role that Gyökeres had was to attack from out to in on Yoro to Bayindir. And he wasn't doing it with the intensity and also at times he wasn't doing it at the right time, jumping in the right moment. And that's what Mikel alluded to post-match, where he said, and I've just found this clip recently, he said there are certain things in the high press that we demand certain rhythm, and he needs to...
Do you want me to read it? I've got it exactly here. You can tell, especially in our high pressing, the rhythm that we demand, especially in the first half, we're giving a bit too much time. But this is actually a misquote, because he says he's giving a bit too much time. He doesn't say we're. It's something that it's so interesting. I always think you should watch them. It's something that we have to work on, especially there. And then in the finalising situation, he didn't have that many chances to do that, and he goes on to something else. But that was the quote. Yeah,
so it's kind of like, so there are certain things in which the team needs to adapt to Gyökeres in terms of, not giving him more opportunities and playing to his strengths. But there are things that he needs to do to adapt to the team, and that's what he's alluding to there. Because the whole idea of a press, Arsenal went man to man, right, in terms of player for player, but it didn't feel like it because our intensity wasn't there. And Gyökeres, and it's okay because he's just arrived. He wasn't up to the speed in that regard. And how many times do you see Bayern have so much time on the ball, where the idea of pressing from out to in is you attack the strong foot of the goalkeeper. If the goalkeeper is right-footed, which he is, Gyökeres pressing in that way is trying to force him to move to the left or force him to play with his left foot as well. But he wasn't doing that, and that's why you're able to see the goalkeeper have a lot of time on the ball to play clip balls over the top, etc. Yep. So that was a big problem. The other issues that we had were just in general of the second balls, the technical security. It was way off. These are things that are not part of our DNA. And you saw that throughout the entirety of the game. And that is why you saw the amount of times where Manchester United had attacks, they were able to attack our goal, and we were just under severe stress. So these are things that really prevented us from having any sort of control. And that's why just my final thoughts on it. There's more to it, but I don't want to push too much on it. But when we talk about this game being prevalent under Mikel, it's just false. That if the narrative was Arsenal had a lot of territory upfield, were dominating proceedings, pinning the opposition back deep inside their own box, a lot of a lack of open play chance creation, lack of threat, not enough shots on goal, not testing the goalkeeper. That is a narrative that is very valid from previous sample. But the sample that we saw, the game that we saw yesterday, was Arsenal struggling to have any control whatsoever for the entirety of the game, and us being under severe stress. You can go back to games like Leeds away in 22-23, but that was one half. That wasn't the entire game. You can go back to Villa last season. That wasn't Arsenal under stress. That was Arsenal conceding big chances in big moments. What we saw against Manchester United is something that you just don't see a Mikel Arteta team do. And that's why I look at it more from past sample. This is an anomaly. That's not to say that it might not happen in the future, because I can't predict that. But when we look at previous performances, I'm telling you, I'll debate this with anyone. I've not seen a game under Arteta, barring exceptional circumstances, i.e. a red card, in which we are forced to play a game like that, where we just don't have any control. So.
Yeah, I want to come back on two things before we move on to some individual performances. I think the Gyökeres thing is really interesting, and I'm really curious. Now, it's so early to really sort of put your flag in the ground on anything, but I'm so curious, as I've mentioned before, about his body composition, how that changes. I'm curious when we use him and how we use him. I feel later on in the season, this game would have really suited him. It almost came too early for him. Yeah. Like that's sort of how I felt. I almost felt like he would have thrived in that game mid-November. He's had a good couple of European nights or whatever, and he's confident he's going to Old Trafford. Game one, everyone's getting their touch back. It almost just felt too early for him, I felt, because it felt like a game that did suit him. When Havertz came on, I thought we maybe got a little bit more control, had a bit more of an outball, but I didn't feel the threat. So, yeah, it's a really curious one to see how that all develops. And yeah, we've jumped into the sort of the issues with that game, but it was curious to have seen the response. And as always on this podcast, as people know exactly what I'm about to say, it's X and YouTube and whatever. You cannot just take that's what people think. But ultimately, it's more of a position of, if you've seen the response and the criticism of the way Arsenal played, it's more of the expectation of where we are, I feel. And that's more interesting to me because, ultimately, it isn't fair. Arsenal play badly and win. Well, you can't do that. Arsenal play really well and don't win. Well, you can't do that. Okay. Yeah. And it's true. We have to play really well and we have to win to get, and to get even we'll still get criticism for that. I'm sure in some ways something we've done will annoy people. And that's fine. That really is fine. I really want to come to that because it's just like We went to Old Trafford, a place where we have a terrible record, and we had issues. We've gone into them, and in transition, we've gone into them. That's a game, as you mentioned, Rohan, that we did not control for any sort of significant period. But how many times, I said this to George in this interaction, but I don't think I've spoken to you about it. How many times were we calling at the end of last season for a game that we didn't actually control and we didn't merit to win, and we did anyway?
Exactly.
And that's a big step forward for this Arsenal team. So it's weird because I almost come away from that game sort of not at all proud of the performance, but quite proud of certain other aspects. It's bizarre.
Just quickly to add on that before I let George come in, it's like we don't want Arsenal to scam wins, right? No. But when we're talking about the course of a Premier League season on top of fixtures in other competitions, you are not going to be able to play at a level that you desire. It's just not possible. They're humans, right? And Old Trafford coming that early leads to these sorts of things happening as well. And we've said it many times, and Mikel did it last season where we spoke about it many times on the podcast, that interview he had with the Men in Blazers, where when we're not at our best, we still need to find a way, not just to get a point, but to come away with a win. Yep. And that's exactly what it is. Arsenal didn't deserve to win that game yesterday. I'd say a draw on the balance of play would have been a fair reflection of what we saw. Yep. But we got through it and won the game whilst having a performance level where I'm telling you there's not more than 3 players who played like above their average level, And to do that on opening day, like I said, the Old Trafford factor, I don't care what anyone says of where Manchester United are as a football club. Their fans, every fan base in the Premier League on match day 1 is up for it, irrespective of what has happened.
And the players.
And the
Cunha
players.
and Buemo especially.
Exactly. That is always dangerous. And that's what makes football so exciting, but also scary, and it can really hurt you. And we got through it, and that's why I'm buzzing with it, and that's my thoughts on it.
And we won't come to him individually. Maybe we should have, but Gabriel. I mean, that's the days you buy Gabriel for. I thought it was terrific. We want to come to our looky-likey on the pod, Mr. Calafiori, who I thought had a really, really interesting game. George, your cousin, Calafiori at his best provides us something that we do not have in the team. In fact, I think Mikel actually even said that. Let me just go back because I had his. I have his quotes up. I might be able to find. Here we go.
Super tall, bro, and it's super intimidating.
Yeah. So here's what he said after the game. He has the capacity to change the energy. He comes in this room and he changes the energy in the room. He changes the energy in the team. He has an aura. He has a presence that is special. Now, insert clip. All that stuff about Calafiori. You could. Okay, fine. But ultimately, that is a factor. And I think what is so exciting for me, George, is what we saw in terms of, we discussed this a little bit on the instant reaction about the fullback changes and what we can do at fullback, the different combinations and stuff. I will say for me, I think if you have a Calafiori on the pitch, you need a Martinelli on the pitch, because there was a couple of times he slightly bailed him out. But the positions he picks up, the passes he plays off both feet, I was watching a comp of him, they can't predict what he's going to do. And for a player in his position in this Arsenal setup at left back and the way we use our left back, that is a position that you can make your own. You can stamp your own authority. You can pick up spaces no one expects. You can kind of be a maverick in that position in a way that maybe we wish other players could be. George, talk to me about your looky-likey, Calafiori.
I'd said before that I feel as though that Calafiori, when fit, has the potential to be a maverick for Arsenal this season. And, look, the pushback was, the whole typical thing about, availability and yada, yada. But I actually think it's gone a step too far, where I think people have actually questioned. It's not just the availability. There has been a bit of a talent concern, which I've always felt is crazy to me. I've never understood why there's been some pushback as far as people wanting to highlight some of the defending in wide spaces. And I'm looking at a player that is special on the ball. He talked it he's done it at Bologna. He's done it in his national team. This is a guy that steps up for moments. And, I could sit there and talk to you about all of the brilliant things in terms of his ability, his reception, the way that he's able to attack spaces and his spatial awareness. Like, this is a guy that doesn't panic no matter what. He'll do a pirouette in the box in the same way that he'll do a pirouette in his own box and freak people out. His activity when pressured and to remain calm is his superpower. That's what it is. He's got a lot of things that he can do, some things that doesn't always come off. However, it's his ability to remain composed when everyone else is panicking that I love. And, his natural idea is people want to label him as chaos, but it's controlled chaos. He knows exactly what he's doing. And it's more of a case of a pass and move dictating play. Like, this is, for me, somebody that dictates our flow. People will look at Zubimende and say, that makes sense to me. I get how he's dictating flow, dropping between the center backs, playing passes here and build up. People can all see that. But for me, Calafiori dictates when this team goes and when he doesn't. Rice is another example of a player that can do that, especially in his carrying capacity. However, Calafiori for me has a different level of culture to how he does it. And, there was a lot of, talk about what Calafiori could be. And of course, we understand that we haven't seen him as much. But guys, this was a player that was never bought to be competition. It was never a player that wasn't considered for the starting 11. And to me, some of the things that he was doing, not just in his runs and his ability to provide overlaps, because I think a lot of people have highlighted this dynamism, like he's a strong runner, so therefore he could provide the overlap that we all yearn and love. But I'd like to continue to highlight how many big moments we've seen this man rise. By the way, it wasn't just the goal, but, he almost had a goal himself that I think the offside was wrongly chalked off. I've had a way to look back at that. That's brilliant, brilliant head-up display by Martinelli. First time Trivela out and he's gone. And, he's onside for that. But if you look at the pass before it gets to Martinelli, Calafiori has made that happen. And he's made that through his movement. And so for me, this is somebody that has massive potential to impact the 11. I think that when you're looking at the best things about Calafiori, it is some of those things that I've talked about being composed in spaces. However, he makes himself available and he never hides. He's always somebody that demands. And when the team is shrinking, he says, I'm here. When Mikel's talking about he has this aura and he's walking into the dressing room, what it is I want you to know I'm safe. And he does this all the time. And that breeds a level of confidence as a player, because I'm telling you right now, if I've got somebody next to me that's like that, I'm calm. It influences calming natures by acting that way. And even if he messes up, he doesn't care. And there's that, there are the Jesus carriers, I'll call them, which are just chaos inducing and very much they're important, right? You can't have too much of one type. There's the Jesus that is almost like, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to beat you. And the next man, I'm going to hold it and I'm going to continue to do it. I'd call that the chaos runner. Then you've got this Calafiori who is chaos himself, because you don't know where the hell he's going to go. He could pop up at right back, right wing, center forward. He's going where the play needs him. However, it's controlled. It's calm. Every time that point receives it in the middle third, I know he's going to spread play to the right decision every time. And, we don't have enough of those. So when you have a look at it, and especially down the left-hand side, who is our controlled carrier down that side? Declan, for me, I know what he's going to do. He is brilliant at aspects of carrying, but this is not a guy that's going to drop in from deep, turn on the half turn in a very congested halfway line, or even, really more towards the box, turn and play in somebody cutely. That's not Declan's game, right? Calafiori can do that, ironically. And, you need to be able to mix qualities. And that, for me, is the thrust. That's the thrust that we're getting from that side. I don't even think we've seen a ton of what his game has to offer, guys. Like, there's a huge crossing potential that we haven't seen.
How many games did he miss last year? I've got the number here.
I have no clue. Probably 25.
Yeah, about
Rohan?
30.
28. It's crazy. If you'd asked me that, I would probably have said 16, 17, 28 games last season. Goal, 90% pass accuracy. Consider the positions he was taking up. 90% pass accuracy, 2 out of 2 long balls completed, 3 clearances, an interception, a tackle, 2 out of 2 aerial duels, 28.9 kilometers top speed. He's sort of closer to a Joao Cancelo at points. It's like, when you consider what his profile in inverted commas is, it is unbelievable. Rohan, I kind of want to move on to another individual, but just quickly on him. I mean, it's really, maybe let's talk about the fullbacks. It's scary what can be achieved and how we've ended up with two very different profiles at left fullback and two very different profiles at right fullback, how we can change games, how we can interchange between games. If we can keep all those fit, like, would it be an understatement to say, okay, let me ask you a different question. Would you be surprised if we were sat here in May next year talking about how Arsenal's fullbacks won them the title? I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised. No. Do you know what I mean? And that's crazy. And that's a new way of I can't think of a team who's done that.
You wanted to go there, George?
Yes, because just really quickly, because people want to highlight Antonio Conte's system change. Guys, what was the primary way that Antonio Conte won the league when he first came in
at the time?
Yes, the wing backs, Moses and
So now Mikel's no longer able to do that. Like, I have a real problem with people using this as a stick to beat Arsenal with, that we talk that defenders are what change game for Arsenal. Yeah. Well, guess what? Every team has an identity that does go to change games. You should be critiquing if they don't have that ability, if the teams don't full on not have that ability to change games. And I'm tired of people rewriting history about some of the most successful teams of the past. Guys, Ashley Cole, you want to analyze the Invincibles? Let's have it right. Ashley Cole is a critical portion to that trident working. Pires doesn't get to go on the inside and do half the stuff that he gets to do without the thrust of Ashley Cole on the outside. When you talk about Henry and him drifting out to the left, by the way, that boy was going central everywhere. Everyone knew it. Having a fullback be the reason that you change games is not new. It's not something Mikel has just brought in, okay? It's been shown as successful in the past multiple times. But if you're talking about a team, by the way, whose main priority is rotation through wide areas, and you're telling me I'm supposed to just remove a critical portion of wide creation in the fullback and say, oh, that's just typical Mikel. We're doing it defensively and ugly and not in the right way. I'm sorry, you're being biased. And Antonio Conte, who many people talk about how much of a serial winner that man is, fundamentally had his system created on wingback creation and providing width in those areas and getting your Victor Moses, your unflashy types, attack space in certain areas. And that's how he created space to win the league. So for me, the flexibility that you guys talk about, that could be the reason we win the league. Not only am I okay with it, I'm just not, I'm confused why people want to degrade it when we've seen it so often.
Yeah. Just to add to your point, if you just look at Trent and Robertson in their peak day for Liverpool, go and look at what Hakimi and Mendes offered PSG last season in the Champions League. Obviously, the midfield and the forwards get the big credit, and rightly so. But those fullbacks were fantastic, So
look, I don't personally, George. I don't think people degrade it. I think people what people do is they built up an image of what Mikel Arteta is as a defensive coach, etc. But for example, I was looking at our Big Six record. Something popped up of our Big Six record before Mikel arrived. Mate, if you want to go back there, be my guest. Be my guest. I think we picked up something like 6 points out of 57, like around 2017, mate, 17.
We couldn't buy a win against Chelsea. Chelsea would steamroll us every single time at Stamford Bridge. The last time we beat Chelsea was when they had Villas-Boas and we won, that Van Persie hat-trick. Old Trafford, the last time we'd beaten them before Mikel was in 2006, I believe, 1-0 Adebayor.
Something like that.
Man City and Liverpool, we would not get results there before Mikel. And these are things that remain common under him. It's like obviously, it's always, that's that investing thing, right? They always say like past performance doesn't equal future performance, right? And that's always that still remains, right? But when you look at our past performance against the so-called Big Six under Mikel, we can project that forward into what's going to potentially happen this season as well, because the sample is there. Just to quickly add on to your Calafiori segment, and I don't want to talk too much about the player, but I want to talk about what he does to other players around him. And I mentioned this to George in the previous podcast, and I'd be curious to get your take on it as well, Alex, where we cry out for Declan Rice to be used in a certain way, not constantly between the opposition defensive and midfield line, where he's not getting a lot of touches on the ball, and he's effectively operating as a creative number 8 who can receive, turn in tight spaces and make things happen. That's not Declan Rice's game, and we're crying out for him to get more touches, deeper, face play, switches, etc. That happens more with Calafiori when he plays, and you can look at the games last season when we played Forest, played West Ham, PSG, Leicester. You see a better usage of Declan Rice. Now, Declan Rice yesterday had a really poor game. And I actually do think that he's clearly carrying something, because I find it very difficult to think of a game.
He's not coming off for Marino.
He's not coming off for Marino in that sort of game state where we have conceded what the type of game is. Like, we know what this game is now. We knew, going into the second half what this game entails. You don't take Declan Rice off in that situation. So he had a really poor game, and I think he's carrying something. But I think what Calafiori does to other players, and Declan Rice in particular, I think that's so key as well. So
yeah, for sure. Before we come on to your questions and so on in the second half of the show, I just wanted to be honest, we could have an Odegaard section, we could have a Gabriel section, we could have a section on some players who maybe didn't have such good performances, but there were some players who did stand out. Clean sheets in the Premier League since 2023-24. Alisson Becker, 17 in 5th. Andre Onana is 4th with 18. Edison is 3rd with 20. Jordan Pickford is 2nd with 25. David Raya is 1st with 30. He's conceded just 58 goals in his 71 league games for the Gunners. Weirdly, and George and I again spoke about this on the instant reaction, I think most Arsenal fans, that probably wasn't his best day necessarily as an overall goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I didn't think his distribution was, I think he could. It was fine. It wasn't his level, and we know what his level can be. I think sometimes he was putting, particularly Gabriel, in some tricky spots. So you could have pick holes in it. But ultimately, Rohan, I'll come to you. He comes up with that moment from Cunha, and it's like those are. I said this in a video on my channel before we started the season. I can't, and this wasn't on that level, but I would love to come out of this season again with more kind of Declan Rice Real Madrid. Who, if you ask any Arsenal fan, who won us that game against Real Madrid, Declan Rice won it with his 2 free kicks. I can't really remember many under Mikel Arteta. Probably, you go back to the Aubameyang days really, but certainly with this under this team where you go, without him, no way. And that's been a massive aspect of us that I like, is a big positive. But I'd sort of love to feel on days where we do need bailing out that there are players who can step up and take those moments. As I say, I'm not sure that was one of those days, but I predict this season David Raya is going to have maybe 2 games where we say that was a David Raya game. Yeah. If we are going to become a little bit more transitional, if we are going to be a team who are maybe a little bit more into the chaos and less out of the control, etc., as we've spoken about so many times, it's so big to have him there. I feel a new, this is just fan projection, but I feel a new confidence from him. I don't know what it is, and maybe it is projection. I don't quite know. It feels like he believes that he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, and maybe that wasn't quite there when he first came in. There was sort of, I'm coming to Arsenal. Something I noticed in the game, he has the date. Do you remember the Arsenal game against Brentford where they came up and it was Friday night football under the lights? They beat us 2-0. Ironically, from 2 set pieces where they were blocking the goalkeeper. We won't go there today. He has that tattooed on his neck. The journey this guy has gone through to the point where it was tattoo on the neck worthy of ball, is to be in the Premier League, to have beaten Arsenal on opening day. That was something he wanted to mark in that way. Tells you the journey from Stockport and Blackburn and where all these places. He's come so far. He's unbelievable. He really is unbelievable. I'm sort of weirdly proud of his journey in football. It's amazing.
He's just a fantastic goalkeeper. He's also a very good speaker as well. I don't know if you've listened to him on podcasts. He's very clear and he's...
Big pundit.
Yeah. And I think I remember when he did a podcast with Ben Foster before, and he always goes, how it's funny, we always go back to that Luton game. He always goes back to that Luton game as well.
Yeah.
Literally every single time. It's that was the game where he said, right, I need to actually have a good hard look at myself and realise that this is not the level that I need to be playing at to get Arsenal over. Ironically, that Luton game, right, David Raya was doing everything he possibly could to lose us that game, and since then, the sample size is incredible. And what I love about David Raya is the fact that I think Aaron Ramsdale was a very big success for Arsenal. I maintain it in terms of where Arsenal were to the moment where Aaron Ramsdale left, and what happened between him and David Ryan, what Mikel demanded in terms of being more comfortable, baiting and being more aggressive off your line. Those are the things that Mikel put a lot of emphasis on, and why he was always keen on David Raya. I think he wanted David Raya before we actually signed Ramsdale as well. And I think with Raya, what's great is that, and I think the reason why you feel more at ease is because he's performed in various different conditions, where in his first season at Arsenal, post Luton away, I think people looked at the Golden Glove that Arsenal won and attributed it more to Saliba, Declan Rice, and Gabriel. David Raya didn't really have anything to do, and that was the narrative. Whereas, as Arsenal fans who watch the games, watch them back, recognise what he offered in terms of cross collection, in terms of the ability on the ball, baiting, playing left centre back, right centre back, etc., depending on the situation, the long range passing, etc. Those don't get clipped up when you're talking about a Golden Glove. When you're talking about a Golden Glove, you think of David De Gea, you think of Petr Cech. These are traditional shot stoppers who made big saves in big moments. And David Raya didn't show that side to him at Arsenal in that season because he didn't need to. But last season, he showed that side, where there were a lot of games where he was under stress. I mean, I saw your tweet about when was the last time Arsenal scammed a win. I would say it was that Villa game.
Yeah,
Who was the man of the match in that game? It was David Raya. It was David Raya. He came up clutch. And he performed in an environment where it is more traditional. It's more down on your shot stopping. And also, just to go back and put in more emphasis on the point that you made about chaos and this idea of chaos that Arsenal could lean into. Liverpool, when you talk about Salah, Firmino, Mane, the reason why they were comfortable in that chaos factor is because Alisson is the best 1v1 goalkeeper that we've seen, I'd say, over the past decade or so. He gives you that reliability in the fine margins there. And David Raya, he has performed as a traditional shot stopper at Arsenal now, and he won the Golden Glove last season as well, where there was more emphasis on that. So he's performed in various different conditions, and that's why he's a fantastic keeper. I agree with both of you. I don't think it was his best performance all round, because there were moments in build-up where he was sloppy, and that was something that was prevalent across the entire team, really. But it's being able to make it happen in those key moments, and
he will know that. And I look around this team. And I look around the league and I look at Man City situation with Ederson where he's leaving, who's going to be their number one. I look at Liverpool with Mamadashvili on their bench, what's going to be happening with Alisson. United need a goalkeeper. Are all Spurs fans convinced by Vicario? You can go through every single team and sort of say, the situation there's not great. Having a settled number one with a good backup, we count your lucky stars. That is not a thing that even PSG, for example, in another situation, you can go around Europe. So we're very, very lucky. And I think really, before we move on from Rad, I think that the big thing for me on that day to sum up the difference between the two goalkeepers and where we've been burned before with the likes of Bernd Leno against Brentford, against that team, is on the corner kicks. Both teams do exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. I think it's De Ligt on Raya and I think it's Saliba on Bayindir. And only one goalkeeper is bullied. They do the exact same thing. They're using the same screening sort of technique. So, and that tells you something. And he's not going to be bullied. And I think we are very, very lucky to have David Raya. He's a fantastic player. And as you say, really, I think a good representative for Arsenal as well. Let's move to your questions. Thank you all so much for joining us on the podcast. If you're new here, as always, make sure you like and subscribe, etc. If you're on Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave us a review. Why not? We do have, and I should have mentioned this at the top, we do have an FPL league. Rohan, have you got the code for us? Because this is your bag. I don't play FPL. Well, I do play FPL. I play for 2 weeks and then forget the team and then pretend I didn't care.
Did you have a team this season?
No, less than you believe.
So the code is, we've actually put the auto link in TCB Live before, and probably be good for the description actually to put the link in.
Yes, I think it's on the community page as well, but just for audio as well.
For audio listeners, the code is 51X8VM. So that's X for X-ray, V for violet, and M for mango. Don't know if that is the phonetic alphabet.
I'll buy it.
I don't know. I feel like some of them are butchered, but yeah. So 51X8VM. So
yeah, I'll buy that. Let's go to your questions on Discord, where you get priority access to questions if you're a Discord member, which you can get access to by becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. We've got a rewatch of the United game coming this week with me and George, so we'll come to all your questions on there. Starting off with, we've got a halftime interviews question that will get George going. Let's do this one. Are there any concerns, says Nick, with MLS experiencing a sophomore slump? He's been quite rusty pre-season and even against United. Nick, thank you for being a member of our Discord, and this is in no way a personal comment against you. We're in that period of the season where we've had about 2 games and we all want to launch into narratives.
Yeah.
We all want to launch into this is the case. And Nick, you're probably not saying that at all. I think the preseason thing I'm doing away with because it's preseason. I am curious though about how Miles approaches this season. I think that could be an interesting conversation because I think I said this last year. I actually think he will have a bit of a down year. Ultimately, how can you match a year where you can't match a year, and there will be more questions asked of Miles. I even asked one on the not necessarily a question, but sort of I'm looking out for the yellow card situation from this year. I think there's something to look at least, and I'm not trying to start a narrative and go against my own warnings. George, I'll come to you. Miles won't be able to match what he did last year. He won't be. You can't make your England debut and Premier League debut and Champions League debut again. It's the genie's out of the bottle. What do you expect this season? Do you see him sort of rotating with Calafiori? Obviously, wax lyrical about him. Do you see any midfield minutes? Do you see regression, progression? What do you envisage for one of your many sons? I was going to say your son, but he's one of them, isn't he?
People don't seem. Well, they know it. That youth, development isn't linear. They say it. Everyone likes to acknowledge it. But then when it comes down to actually seeing that happen, they don't want to talk about it. And in fact, if you really want to call it stagnation, but having the same level is progression for somebody that played, let's have it right, 6 months of the year. Having a full season of consistency is an improvement on 6 months of consistency. And you talk about debuts being the first time. I mean, they're a debut, sure. But, he was also just first name on the team sheet. And when you start to talk about that, though, also born out of necessity. I love Miles. If Calafiori's fit for the exact same amount of time, are we really that confident that Miles has the same amount of minutes that he did last year? Potentially. I don't know. We'll find that question out this year, really. But it wasn't all pure talent. As much as I love him, there was some circumstance to the degree to which he was asked to play. And he rose. And he rose brilliantly. And I knew he would rise. However, there is a little bit of us trying to find a way to make our stars rise and then kill them and do this yo-yo in terms of trying to figure out their progression pathway. Like Ethan, it happened a lot earlier. Guys, like when he first burst, on in terms of some of his debut, well, I wouldn't call it debuts, more of his minutes earlier in the season, people were demanding a lot more, right? There was that Leicester cameo, and then after that, it was like, well, why isn't he starting? And then there was this thing of afterwards, by February, March, he just didn't get a look in entirely. And people said, okay, well, he had a slump. It's very normal. This is, youth football. And I'm just sitting there like, mate, you told me on a podcast previously, we were playing the game. How many minutes did Ethan had both Champions League and Premier League? I was shocked. I thought it was 750, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 1,000 minutes that you had said. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to say, hold on a minute. So even the person that we're saying had a downer year in the youth football terms still accrued 1,200 minutes in Premier League and Champions League. Like
in his down year, he accrued nearly 1,400 minutes. Yeah.
Come on, like what are we doing here? I don't know. For me, I just don't consider it a down year. I don't even consider it a slump. A slump for me would be somebody that has to be taken out of the team. That is like
just sorry to cut you very quickly. The craziest stat about Ethan I saw recently was he scored 9 goals from, do you know the non-penalty XG?
Oh yeah, it's something like 1.2 or something.
1.9.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And the reason I bring Ethan is not to compare the two, but that was somebody everyone felt had a down year or a up and down year last year as far as integration. Yeah. And, it just comes from these unrealistic expectations of what the world superstars are doing. Your Yamals, your Sakas, comparing everybody to like a gold standard that is just not normal and not replicable, really. Yeah. Look, I'll just speak to the player. As I spoke to him beforehand in the season, not only was he ready for adult football, he is ready for adult football. Why? Because of how he deals with adversity. I have zero doubts that Miles, if there was a slump, and I really push back that there is a slump, respectfully. Thank you for the question. I don't think you were saying that necessarily.
No, I don't think so.
But
no.
Even if we experience a slump and you're asking me, can Miles react? Yes, undoubtedly. Like, this is a guy that walked in to a knockout game against Madrid for the very first time as one of the better players on the pitch. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's crazy. Like the euphoria, even the adulation, if you want to call it beginner's luck in a sense and about just playing your game. I'm sorry. There's not many characters in world football that can do that. On your debut, not just getting a debut. What did he do on his debut, guys, for England?
Surely the character.
It's not just that he hits those milestones. He smashes through the ceiling and he impacts it. So for me, there's undoubted ability for him to take it forward. The only thing I think I'm looking at Miles, if I'm looking at a season objective map for him, is I want him to play a full season of consideration and being one of, if not the first name on the team sheet. And, maybe that can't happen because Calafiori's brilliant, and that's okay. But I would look at him trying to put himself where not only is he continuing on from last year, but now we are looking at some midfield minutes. We are looking at him as not just the plucky youth that's building a hole or filling a hole. He is a player we consider to impact games. Yeah. And I think we already do, but it's just doing that for 12 months is a step up from just doing it from 6 months. And I want to really hammer home that point. Yeah. That's the same for Ethan. Ethan needs to have his Miles moment of last year. Miles already had it. Now he's got to provide the consistency.
It's a testament to him how, just quickly, you go back to Old Trafford yesterday, 70th minute. I need to see this result out now. And he brings on Miles. That's crazy. That's actually nuts. I rely on you now to get a result for us. You are that type of player. It's the same as Timber, what he does on the right-hand side. Miles has become that insurance policy, and that's crazy.
Over 2,000 minutes for Miles last season, even though he only made his debut in September. And obviously, Calafiori was in and around the team as well, even though he had some injuries. So there was some. Ultimately, when I can't imagine we're going to see some huge, big developments. He plays every single minute, maybe moves into midfield, etc. And there will be some times when maybe we're going, we lost him, but he's 18. He's just signed his new deal. It's just going to take some time. And I also, you sort of mentioned it earlier. People like Yamal. They're an outlier for a reason. It doesn't happen for basically anyone. And it's not to downplay Miles' talent at all. It's just to say that those are freaks, like proper freaks. Let's do another one from Discord, which is from Alejandro AFC, who says, do you think we'll fix our performances for the next 5 games? Is it on the players, the manager? And do we need signings to improve? So just to remind people of the next 5 fixtures, we have Arsenal versus Leeds at home on Saturday the 23rd. Then the final one before the bloody international break in September, which just annoys me every single time. You just get going and then there's another international break. Then we're at Anfield on that Sunday, 4:30. Rohan, your favourite time. Then we're back on the early kickoff. How exciting, against Nottingham Forest at home on September the 13th. And then another Sunday 4:30 kickoff. Oh, and another Sunday 4:30 kickoff the week after for at home against Man City and away against Newcastle. Rohan, I'll come to you. Just going back to the question, win would be probably my answer. What do you want to see in these next 5 games?
Performances and results.
Performances, results, good football, goals, winning.
Goals, clean sheets, please.
Yeah.
Gyökeres hat-tricks.
Every week.
Against Leeds, I think I was always of the mindset, get through Old Trafford, try and win the game. A draw wouldn't be the end of the world, but a win on match day 1 is fantastic. That's what we did. Leeds at home. That's the type of game that I wanted yesterday, or the first game week. Sunny day at the Emirates, just nice, relaxed vibes, playing relegation. I'm not going to say fodder because that could come back to bite us. But I think I'd love to see a top performance. And I think we will see a performance because, like I alluded to, the Man United game was an anomaly when I consider previous sample. It's a case of then we're looking at different things. We're looking at, okay, we know we're going to have a lot of territory. We know we're going to be able to dominate proceedings. But how much threat are we going to create? How many times are we going to test the goalkeeper in open play, etc.? Those are the questions that we're going to be asking ourselves. And the Liverpool away, I think the big games, they're not going to be the prettiest on early doors because I don't think either of the teams are going to be at full throttle. And then it's just about getting results, mate. I think it's a marathon, not a sprint. But at the same time, I do believe that starting I'd say the first 19 games are so important in terms of getting a head start. Arsenal don't tend to get a strong start, barring that 22-23 season. It's kind of like if we could just get that 22-23 season, first 19 games, have 23-24 post-January onwards. It's the perfect mix.
Come on, Arsenal.
Yeah.
Get on with it. What's wrong with you?
Can I just ask you two a question, right? What is the worst kickoff time, actually? I think... I hate 4:30 Sundays or Monday night because you've got to wait so long.
The early kickoff Saturday. I don't like being the first one.
Or the Friday night.
But that's good and bad though, right? Because you could get the game done early, you win, and you're chilled. But if you lose...
I think the early kickoff maybe... I don't want to speak for you, George, but maybe for international fans because it ruins your whole day. You wake up and watch it, and that's your whole day ruined.
That's what you wake up to. You wake up to angry, and then you have no way to change it.
But imagine it, Rohan. Like it's like 9:30, and your day's ruined.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know what I mean?
Or 7.
I mean, 12:30 for us is we've still got a lot of our day to go as well, right?
No, it's a 7:30. You wake yourself up on a Saturday that you're hoping to like plug out from work, and your plug out is a loss. It results in a crash out. That's what it does.
Yeah, 7:30 is crazy. 7:30 a.m.
Yeah. I think the early kickoff I would love to know I'm sure some I was going to say sad act out there will do this, but I bet someone listening has done it. I bet there's some good numbers on Arsenal losing games in the early kickoff, especially on TNT Sports. I don't know what
TNT Sports is
BT Sport early kickoff. I swear down.
Guys, wasn't that a thing with us? That like early kickoff for years had been something that we struggled with. Am I misremembering a narrative? There was something
Klopp used to complain about it all the time. Don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Especially after an international break as well. Like you've got the midweek international game, and then you've got the 12:30. That's probably the worst combo.
Yeah.
Or
look, I love it. I love our Champions League schedule. I just think from the player's perspective, the third game in a game week that you have 3.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter the kickoff, but the load. Like it doesn't matter where. Maybe it's a Carabao Cup or whatever it might be. But if you've already played 2 games, I don't care what time the kickoff is. You're probably as a coach like, I have no time to prepare all week. It's just training, recovery. That's it. So I think from a coaching and player's perspective, probably that. But from a fan's perspective, early kickoff Saturday, hands down for me.
Let's do this one from the Discord. Saleh says, what... should I ask this? What or who do you think is the biggest block at the club to achieving success? I'm gonna outlaw the word who. I'm just gonna say what.
Can I name him? Can I be bold? I have a name that I think.
If it's your life,
I think I know who you're going for. I know who it is. Does it begin with a T? Yeah. I knew it was gonna go. And
what he represents in the club.
Just say it again, George, because I'm not sure we caught that.
Yeah, Tim Lewis is, for me, the biggest issue with Arsenal Football Club. And it is, sure, he's a lovely person. He and what he represents is the biggest reason as to why Arsenal didn't recruit a forward in 2024. And it's something that has plagued Arsenal for me as a philosophy in a while, where you look at probably in the last 20 years, you look at Arsenal and there's been the one thing that people might say is we need one more thing to get us over the edge when we're really good. And there's an apprehension to go all out. The idea is about, I look at our situation now and we're not done. We have room for almost 200 million of PSR, and Arsenal pushing out the boat to really go the extra mile to win. There's a cautionary tale that we've always got to be the ones that are either the quote unquote good guys or somebody following some kind of regulation. We can't be risky in aspects of our management. And I just think that Arsenal far too often head into, at least upstairs, and that's why for me it's always been the case, whether it was with David Dean, whether it was here with Tim Lewis, our boardroom tends to shoot themselves in the foot and be afraid of apprehension. And we don't tend to go the extra mile to risk. And, you know, for me, he is the money block to KSE, Tim Lewis. And, you know, this is, I think something that we need to change. We can't keep looking at it from a pure numbers perspective. There needs to be a better strategic outlook in our board in which we can sit there and say, maybe it doesn't make money sense. Maybe the money sense doesn't make sense. But what about the sporting impact about what this could mean? And it doesn't have to mean a player transfer. It could be something as far as getting a scout that you really want. It could be as far as really supporting the decision to get rid of a player that you really want. It is about being risky in sport. And that's something that we are very risk averse, and we tend to be reactive to situations. And I think that's the biggest thing holding us back.
I agree with you in terms of the overall. I don't know if I agree like it's the biggest thing, but I do think I don't know. I don't have an opinion yet on the risk thing. I do think we are risk averse as an organization and actually as a team, and I think that is a consistent issue. But you're quite confident on the name Tim Lewis, and I'm curious where you get that confidence. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying why specifically him.
Let's take January, for example. And let's go by what people are reporting as far as the most reported reliable in terms of Gunner blog, in terms of looking at that Athletic article, and the decision not to pursue forward when it was confirmed that Josh felt like that was something that we could do. Mikel certainly was pushing for it. And, you know, at that point, you can't say that Edu had creative control, and Edu was certainly pushing for it. So someone on the boardroom had to be the person that was saying no. And why did
which article? I'm not doing a gotcha. I'm genuinely asking which article.
Go in the end of January when Gunner Blog talked about the entire proceedings in terms of why they didn't want to go and find a forward.
Right.
The issues that they said was that they were keeping their powder dry, and in the end, Ollie Watkins was something along the lines of there wasn't a deal to be had there. But Josh had approved it, Ato had approved it, Mikel had approved it. However, we're going to be keeping our powder dry, and we're going to continue on and looking forward, and we're going to try to then apply those funds for the summer. This has been a kind of consistent rhetoric that I receive where if you have your organization and 3 out of 4 decision makers are saying, okay, it's fine, then I don't get why one person has the power to say no. Go back to David Dean and Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger wanted signings. David Dean wanted signings. But our board, someone on our board, had the power to overrule 2 or 3 of the major sporting making decisions there. And it comes down to being risk averse again, even in that era. So from my perspective, it's Tim Lewis is the only one that has that refrain in the current modern era. But our board have had this, I'll call it a disease, for years. It's not just Tim Lewis. Arsenal Football Club have been incredibly risk averse in their decision making for as long as I've supported them.
I think,
and there's got to be some reason as to why, and I just don't understand why 2 to 3 of the sport making decision makers consistently get overruled for risky decisions that honestly just come down to money. There is a level of budget to it, and I don't understand it. I don't understand where, yes, there's a numerical issue, but the sporting strategy never gets funneled as a reason as to why you can become risky. And that has to be paired in life as well as in sports. When you look at the overall strategy, that's one thing, and the business strategy is another thing. And far too often we rely on valuation and internal valuations, far too often, and we use that as a crutch to say, well, we can't go past this point because internally we agreed on this. Despite major decision makers saying there is reason to go beyond the numbers, and why it may not mean to just say, okay, fine, numbers don't make sense, but strategy-wise, what it could give you is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
We don't tend to do that.
I think where we're definitely on the same page, George, is Arsenal are risk. I mean, you could go back to the Wenger 40 million and £1, things like that. It's that is a issue at Arsenal, and I think it keeps us at a certain level where it feels like all those moments, you know, even the Petr Cech summer, you can go back historically, whatever, for as long as I can remember, it feels like we've been a couple of signings short, or like, you know, one action short, or whatever.
We don't go the extra mile.
Yeah, and that 100% I do agree with. Yeah. I do want to be cautious on, and we can't look at it on the actual podcast, but I'm just trying to be specific about Tim Lewis. I've found the article, and he's only mentioned once, and it's in context with other people, so James King and Ato and Edu, etc. So maybe we can come back to that, because I want to be specific. And Rohan, like, you know, if it is Tim Lewis, then let's talk about it. But yeah, I'm curious on your take.
Yeah, again, I find it very difficult.
George, if you sorry to cut you. George, if you send me the article, because I'm curious. I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I really am curious.
I'd like to see it as well, because I have seen this a lot from a lot of accounts. So there might be something there in regards to Tim Lewis. But like you, I'm not really confident in giving an opinion on this, because I just don't know. But what I will say, in terms of going back to the question of what I think is the biggest stumbling block, I'd say is injuries. I genuinely do think the injuries is what can prevent us from succeeding and achieving our goals. I do back this team all the way to making it happen in May. I genuinely do think that, because I felt that last season as well. Even with what we did in the transfer window, and how, you know, I was pretty content with it. And so I think injuries would be the biggest stumbling block for me. Like, if we had a good, clean bill of health, I think we can do it, and I think we can succeed.
Yeah, I think there was some stuff recently. I think it was a James Ollie article from the ESPN, and he's had stuff with like the Kroenke, like he's had literally like interviews with the Kroenkes and Arteta and stuff. So he's pretty well connected, and he said he knows for a fact that there has been a big internal review. A lot of the way we approached the summer was about players with good availability. And I think I looked up some numbers. Norgard and Kepa, no major injuries since 2021, so nothing over 2 months. Madueke missed less games than Martinelli in the last 3 years. Gyökeres 5 games in his whole career. Zubimendi something like 10 games in his whole career. I'm probably missing some. Mosquera no games. Obviously he's young, so yeah, I think that's definitely something we have looked at.
What would be yours? I think that's a really hard question, actually.
It's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Right now, Rohan, I actually probably agree with you. I'm trying not to. I'd probably agree with George in the sort of long-term 10, 20-year sense of Arsenal. In the 6 months, I'd agree with you. I do think Mikel Arteta, and he's not necessarily my answer, but I do think Mikel Arteta has shackles to throw off, which he's showing signs that he's doing. But when I watch the team in the last 18 months, the general feeling I get is conservatism. And when I watch Liverpool, I watched Liverpool up against Bournemouth, and maybe there's a sense of jealousy or something. I don't know what's going on just because they won the title. But I do watch the way they play and just think, God, that looks fun. And it's not just fun. There is a genuine reason to have a team who attack in that way and run through you and create as many chances as they do. People fear them, and you could see that in the way Bournemouth defended them. Yes, they were open 100%. I've never suggested and advocated that we go to that level, but for Arsenal to be a bit more fun, to create a bit more energy and a bit more connection, create more chances, etc. I think it's a big question for Mikel Arteta, and one I haven't yet seen him solve. And so that is, I'm not saying he's my answer, but I think that's a big one.
It's simply adding more layers to your model. It's not changing it to a different way of playing. It's not changing it to Liverpool. It's, the whole idea of, like, that Bournemouth game, let's be honest, when it went 2-2, we all celebrated. But deep down, you knew Liverpool were going to win. You just knew it. That feeling you don't necessarily get at Arsenal. And that's, when that feeling becomes, like, regular, there's an issue there. And that's why I've always felt like we can learn a thing or two from Liverpool in terms of how they attack in open spaces. We could learn a thing or two from Real Madrid in their peak day, how they attack in open spaces. It's simply adding more things to our model, At the same time, those teams would look at Arsenal as a blueprint of doing other things out of possession, So that's all it is, really.
Yeah.
So.
Let's finish with a question from Regis_Tar on X, who says, non-Arsenal topic, relegation predictions. It's a bit spooky for West Ham and Brentford. Potter might not make it past October. Yeah, let's do this. Let's have a bit of fun down the bottom of the table. First sacking.
Oh,
I think Potter's gone, mate.
because I think, like, the likes of Burnley, they'll hang on for longer, even when it goes bad. Well, it's going to go bad. They'll hang on.
Who's the new Wolves coach?
Vitor Pereira.
I have a feeling Wolves
You think? Oh.
could be. Yeah. If I remember correctly, he was close last year, but then had a brilliant run that saved his.
And he hasn't got
job.
Cunha.
And
Or Ain't Nuri.
Yeah.
that's like and they don't have. I don't see links to replace those players.
Yeah.
I think Potter is like a good shout. It's just he's one of those for me that like West Ham have brilliant talent despite losing Kudus, and you could make a run to save your job there. Like you've got the talent. I'm searching and I'm looking at that Wolves squad and I'm saying you just removed their best reason for a goal, and you know they weren't great defensively anyway, so I'm not expecting massive change there, and now you've removed their best goal threats without replacing them. I struggle.
Goals are what keeps you up. Always has been, always will be. And that's why Wolves last season, you know, like they were down and out for a large portion of the season, but I was like, now Wolves will be fine because they've got firepower, they'll score goals. But now they're looking in serious issue. There's a big reliance on Strand Larsen. I think Leeds and Burnley are certainties for me, and then it's that third spot. I actually think Sunderland have signed Mukiele, which is nuts.
They've had a crazy window.
That Lasumi guy you always gone on about, George.
And obviously Xhaka as well. So that's
Xhaka's so annoying. Mate, I'll take him at Arsenal. It's that third slot. I'll give you an answer. I'm gonna say Burnley, Wolves. I'm gonna say West Ham.
Really? You think Leeds will stay up?
Because the reason why is because. Do I think Leeds will stay up?
Leeds, they've still got Nonto, haven't they? And I mean,
guys, I think
now.
Brentford have a serious issue as well, especially with the Wissa thing. Like, talent-wise, they can, but that dressing room is not happy. He's going on strike, and they've been gutted.
They've gone through a lot of change, haven't they? As well, you know.
I just feel like with Brentford, they're going to pick up a manager no one's ever heard of who turns out to be the next big thing. It just feels like the most Brentford
That's
thing
Keith
in the
Andrews,
world.
mate. Set piece coach.
No,
I'd go for Burnley, Leeds, and Wolves.
Yeah,
I'm confident about Burnley and Wolves. I don't know about the third one.
Yeah. I'll join you, Rohan, but I'm not confident. Let's do two more each. Let's do dark horses this season.
In what sense? Like for the title, as in
no, just like a team, like say Bournemouth last year, kind of thing. Can I say one everyone's going to hate?
Everton's a good shout.
Spurs.
Oh, you think? Oh, I think people think that they're going to do well. No?
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah.
I think they'll do even better than people.
But
where are
what
you
do you
thinking?
What do you define as like
third or fourth?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like pushing for a title charge at point. There'll be points when they won't, but there'll be points within the title conversation. Especially if they get Eze. That worries me.
I don't know, but I wouldn't put. Okay, now I understand why dark horse.
Yeah,
because I think everybody thinks that they're going to do well, and like they like Thomas Frank, and I think like they'll be in Europe. I think Everton are going to do brilliantly. I think that their recruitment has been phenomenal, and their targeting has been excellent. And you know, they're trying to build a front line. They've always got this solidity about them that makes them, at worst for me, guaranteed to stay in the league. But then if you start to add firepower, that's when you start to jump for me in the table. Like, you know, if you've got brilliant defensive fundamentals, that's one thing, and it can keep you, I'd say, about mid-table. Like, you can be incredibly defensively, but you've got like a ceiling on maybe a 10th or an 8th. I think surprise firepower can get you into those, wow, why are you in European places? And if they continue the Tyler Dibbling, the Malik Fofana type of pursuits, in addition to having Ndiaye, and there was also that new striker that they had got as well, Barrow, I think.
Thierry Barry or something, isn't it? Probably pronounced. That's so English, actually.
Who, by the way, had some phenomenal movement, you know, on the weekend. And I just thought, they're my surprise team, because I know what I'm going to get with them as far as defensive fundamentals. And I was shocked, mate. Like, if they get Malik Fofana from Lyon and Tyler Dibbling as pursuits, what the hell are you guys doing with that front line along with Ndiaye? That is a scary front line. Well, there you go. Like, the pursuits, the attacking pursuits is very un-Everton. They're having a Villa type of attacking pursuit window with a like a team I associate with defensive, strong fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, if you pair those two together, you've got something.
I buy that. Rohan?
I don't know if it's a surprise, but I feel like people will believe Palace will have a significant drop-off without Eze. I actually don't think that will happen. I think they're linked to El Canoes, and some of the players are linked to... Like, they did it... I remember when people were saying the same thing about Elise. When Elise left, it felt like Palace were going to drop. But then they got stronger, actually, ironically. I think Palace have got a really good coach. And if they can keep Guehi, play out his final year before World Cup, I think they'll have a solid season. You know, they were fantastic against Chelsea.
Final one. Player to watch. Player to watch this season. By the way, and this is not my pick, but Ben Doak going to Bournemouth and Semenyo only signing a 1-year extension is interesting. That's all I'll say. I mean, he's not my pick, but that's all I'll say. Rohan, I'll start with you.
That's hard.
That's the meme. What do you mean by that?
I'm going to go for Minter.
Okay.
Brighton's Minter. I think he's due an explosion. I really do. Yeah.
I've talked about this with a good friend of ours on X quite a bit, but Kevin Schade was somebody that I thought
he looks good
in the Bundesliga would be incredible. And I think that he's going to have a standout year. Ironic because I said Brentford could be in trouble, but I think he could be a reason that they stay up. And he's due an explosion. That's a really interesting player that I think just needs to put a few things together and boom, pops.
He got 11 goals last season in the Prem as well.
Yeah, mate. He's serious. Like, we're talking pace galore. And we're talking about a level of technique as well that is very difficult to come by speedsters. And he's got that flexibility to operate as a striker, super tall, physical. That's my prototype. That is like a George VAFC player is him. Versatile, strong, able to cover major distances, huge pressing trigger, got an elite physical edge that, I think he could have a serious season.
Alex is going to say Papa Matasar.
I'm not. I'm going to have two because it's host privileges. Munoz at Palace will get a big move at the end of this year. Ooh. You don't deliver a football like that so consistently and don't get moved to a big club. I'm sorry, he's unbelievable. And I'm telling you, and I'm going to get clowned for this, I don't care. Dewsbury Hall, England, end of the year. That left foot.
England!
I'm telling you, mate. Clip me right now.
He's a good player, but...
Clip me right now. If MJ do it, mate. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, England end of the year. That left peg, mate. Unbelievable. Let us know yours in the comments. And let us know how wrong we are. Laugh at us for not being able to see the future. Right. Thank you all for being here. We'll be back with a rewatch for patrons and YouTube members at some point this week. We'll have TCB Live for you. We will have... what else is going on? George's first episode of the Tactics Corner is coming out on Friday. And we've got an instant... That's for Patreon members and for YouTube members who are on the Director's Box. And we've got an instant reaction for you. So loads coming up. But yeah, just thank you so much for being here. Thanks for supporting the Cannon Podcast. Thank you, Rohan.
Nice one.
Thank you, Danny Zuko.
Thank you, good sir.
Thank you so much for being here. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Inspiration for Arsenal.